The cost of all of the gear that I'm using on this trip is over $5,000. I'm not saying that to brag. I want to test this expensive backpacking gear to see whether it's worth it to bring on backpacking trips. Whether that's finding the most comfortable sleep system for at camp or lightening the weight in my pack so I'm more comfortable on trail, I want to see if this gear is worth it or if it's just a giant waste of money. As I test out the gear, I'll let you guys know what I think is worth considering if you want to maximize comfort, and then I'll provide some budget alternatives for the gear that I think is overpriced. We're gonna jump right into it by talking about this over $400 pack from Z-Packs. And while it is an expensive pack, I've used it a lot, and I do think that it's worth it for people out there who want to pack with 3 features that the Arcol has that no other pack has. The first standout feature is its weight. It only weighs 608 grams, which makes it one of the lightest packs on the market that's fully featured. It has all the doodads that you'd expect, like side pockets, a front pocket, a frame, and a full hip belt. The other 2 standout features are on the back of the pack, and it has to do with the overall frame. The first is that you have an adjustable torso here, so you can move the shoulder straps up and down several inches in order to adjust it so that it fits your torso perfectly. And that is really important if you want to transfer weight to the hip belt and carry a lot of weight effectively. I've had over 40 pounds in this pack, and I felt really comfortable with it. The third feature is something that I know a lot of people out there want, and that's a ventilated back. Some way in order to get airflow on your back so that you're not getting really sweaty on those hot days. And the Arcol delivers with a trampoline back that keeps the pack off your back a little bit and allows for more airflow so you're not getting super sweaty. On this trip, I'm using the 50-liter Arcol, which is a little bit small when you're trying to maximize comfort because you're bringing a lot more gear and slightly bulkier gear. So if you are someone who does have a bit more gear on your trips, then I'd probably go for the 60 or even 70-liter pack. I'm not going far on this trip, just about 10 kilometers, which I think is perfect for comfort-focused trips, where you're spending a lot of time at camp and not necessarily hiking for 14 hours of the day, getting to camp and basically going to sleep as soon as you get there. I'm headed to a random camping spot that I've never been to before. It's right on a lake, and I have a feeling it's gonna be quite beautiful, so it's gonna be nice to spend quite a bit of time at camp. The other 2 on-trail items are a smartwatch and a satellite communicator, and I'll start off by saying that I don't actually think either of these items are needed for most people out there. For a satellite communicator, that's because most people are going on trips to well-traveled areas with a group, and if there is an incident, you run into some sort of issue, then you can handle it as a group and it's not going to be a big deal. Where I think a satellite communicator is worth it because it is very expensive. You have the upfront cost of the device and then monthly fees that you have to pay, is if you're traveling solo or in really remote areas. For me, I'm backpacking alone in the remote Canadian Rockies where there's a lot of dangers, and I want to be able to press that SOS button if I get into a pickle. It's also great because I can message back and forth with Steffi Poo back at home and let her know that I'm okay and haven't been eaten by a grizzly bear. I think there's even fewer instances where a smartwatch is going to be useful for someone. The big one is if you're navigating off trail a lot or going into new areas where there's a lot of broken trail and you have to be making a lot of turn decisions. I use the Garmin Enduro 2 watch as my go-to when I do need a watch for navigating. It's a lot easier to navigate by just looking at your wrist every once in a while and making sure that you're en route instead of having to pull your phone out all the time and draining your phone battery. A smartwatch might also be for you if you're a big data nerd. I'm using the Instinct 2X right now. It doesn't have all of the mapping features like the Enduro 2, but it does track everything that you do. You can keep track of your pace, how long you've been hiking for, elevation gained, elevation that you're at, all those kind of things. And for those of you who are maybe going for a lot of runs during the week and you like to track your activities, then having a smartwatch is really nice. With this video, I don't want to come across like you need expensive gear in order to be comfortable when backpacking. I recently made a different video where I talked about a bunch of comfort-focused gear that was budget-friendly, so go check that out if you haven't already. But I've talked to a lot of people who have told me that the #1 reason why they don't get out backpacking as much as they'd like is because they're uncomfortable out on trail. They'd be willing to spend an extra $100 or $200 in order to get a piece of gear that would make their trips comfortable and allow them to get out more. But you also want to make sure that you're not wasting your money when you're dropping a lot of cash on a piece of gear. And I'm lucky in that I'm able to get my hands on a lot of different gear, including expensive gear, so I can let you guys know whether it's worth it or not. Well, I think these on-trail items are important to talk about, and the pack is pretty cool. What I'm really excited to share with you guys are the items that I have for at camp. I'm gonna pretty much book it down the rest of the trail because my pack only weighs 20 pounds and I can move pretty quickly. And then we'll find hopefully a nice spot to pitch the tent and set up camp. Made it to the lake and the spot where I'm gonna be setting up camp. This north side's pretty marshy, so I think I'm gonna have to walk around the lake, try and find somewhere to camp, maybe in the trees on that point or that point. We'll walk around and find something nice, but overall this is a nice spot. I think I found the spot. Nice flat ground, protected from the wind pretty well, view of the lake, view of the mountains. Yeah, this is a nice spot. I got my tent set up. This is a beautiful spot, so it's time to celebrate with a little tasty beverage. There's two items that you can see right now that I think are essential if you want to be as comfortable as possible on a backpacking trip. The first one is this chair, and the second one is the tent. The chair is the Moonlight Elite chair, and I have every chair, ultralight chair that you can get, and this is the one that I find myself bringing on most of my trips. And there's two reasons why. The first one is that it has these toggles on the side that allows you to kind of recline or cinch it up and then sit a little bit more upright. I like to recline when I'm having a beer, sitting around camp, and then I cinch it up if I'm like cooking dinner or eating dinner, stuff like that. I also like that the carrying case for it doubles as a footprint. So you put these on the four legs and then it keeps you from sinking into the ground, which is great if the ground is soft like it is in the springtime right now, or if you're on sand, that kind of thing. That being said, it's not cheap at $180, which is really expensive, especially when you can get a chair like the REI FlexLite Air, which is lighter than this one and only around $100. But the FlexLite Air doesn't come with a footprint, so you're gonna have issues with it sinking to the ground. It doesn't have the reclining feature. And I honestly, considering how much time I spend in a chair when I'm on a comfort trip, it's nice to invest into a comfortable one. For the tent, we have one of the craziest tents on the market. It costs $900, but I think for some people out there, the features that this tent brings to the table is gonna make that price tag worth it. There's really only three ways that a piece of gear can make a backpacking trip more comfortable. The first one is that the piece of gear is lightweight, so it's more comfortable to carry when you're on trail. The second way is that it could be more functional than a comparable piece of gear. And the third way is that it could bring you peace of mind. Like with the satellite communicator, being able to message back and forth with loved ones back at home could make you feel more comfortable while you're out on trail. The Zpacks Offset Trio addresses two of those factors. First of all, it's very lightweight at just over 700 grams, which is insane for a tent that's this big. It's a 3-person tent, but I consider it more like a roomy 2-person tent. You can fit two 25-inch wide sleeping pads in there and have tons of room left over for activities or to bring a furry friend or a baby. In order to maximize space, it also has these two struts at either end in order to pull out the head and foot end of the tent in order to just really volumize the tent and add a lot of space inside of it. And that's the second way the Offset's more comfortable. It's just an overall very functional tent. In addition to the size and space inside of it, it's also made with a very functional material, Dyneema composite fabric. DCF has a few properties that make it awesome for backpacking tents. It's lightweight, but still very strong, and it doesn't absorb any water or moisture, so it's not gonna sag or stretch when wet. The Offset isn't gonna be the most storm-worthy tent with those struts and the big panels. It's gonna take wind and get buffeted around a little bit, but it's gonna be the tent that I think I'm gonna bring when I'm going on trips with Steffi Poo and we just want something roomy and lightweight. And it might be the tent that I end up bringing once we have our little baby girl and we're trying to go backpacking as a family. I'm gonna wait until tomorrow morning to share with you guys the sleep system that I have here behind me. I think a sleep system is probably the most important comfort item that you bring on backpacking trips. And I have a sleep system that's similar to one that I've told you guys is comfortable in the past, but with some modifications in order to make it what I think will be even more comfortable. But what I will share with you tonight are some more comfort, kind of knickknacks, little things that you have around camp that are just gonna make camp life that much better. The first one is a pump in order to inflate your sleeping pad. I really like the FlexTail Tiny Pump 2X. It's a little bit heavier than the Zero Pump, but it has more pressure, so you don't have to put as many breaths into the sleeping pad after you use the pump to inflate it. It also has a light on it, which is really nice to hang up in your tent and just kind of add some ambiance, or if you're hanging out with somebody else, maybe play some cards or something like that. At this point, pumps are kind of interesting because I think they've gone from being a comfort, maybe luxury item to a pretty much standard kit for a lot of people out there. And FlexTail really has a corner on the market. Another item is something that I haven't really talked about on the channel much, but that I've been bringing on a lot of my winter trips or colder weather trips, and that's rechargeable hand warmers. These ones are made by Okupa and they have a USB-C port in order to recharge. You just double press the button. You have 3 different warmth settings, and you can just hold on to these in order to warm up your hands, put them in your sleeping bag in order to warm that up once you get into it. And that's what I use it for. I put one at the foot end of my sleeping bag or my quilt, and then I kind of hug one and then just warm up my body. They put off a lot of heat. I like that these are reusable. I'm not that big of a fan of the ones they have to shake and then dispose of, because I just feel like I'm creating a lot of waste. And I like these ones because I can just reuse them time and time again. Bugs are starting to get bad, but I did bring something to deal with that. But before I share that, I'm gonna put on my socks and my slippers here because my feet got a little bit wet walking around the lake here. There's quite a few wet spots and I didn't really avoid them. I just trudged right through them. These are awesome little socks. They're made with Alpha Direct material, so they're super lightweight yet still really warm. And then these are my little slippers from Mountain Equipment Company, which I really like. In order to deal with the mosquitoes, because I'm in this lake marshy area, I have another product from Flextail. This is the Tiny Repel. I love Flextail's naming, Tiny Repel, Tiny Pump. It's really obvious what the products do. And this is an electronic mosquito repeller. So you charge it up using a USB-C plug, put in these little kind of pads into here. The device heats those pads up and it releases this vapor that's apparently safe for you to inhale, but repels mosquitoes. And I've used it before, it works really well, and it's gonna be really nice to have around this campsite. In addition to the socks, I brought a full Alpha Direct outfit as well. So I got the pants here. They're see-through, so you're not gonna wanna be wearing these around camp too often unless you're in company that appreciates that kind of thing. And then I got an Alpha Direct shirt here, brings out my eyes. Alpha Direct is crazy in how warm it is and how lightweight it is. It's supposed to get down below freezing tonight, and I know that these 2 pieces of clothing are gonna keep me warm if I threw them on underneath my sun hoodie and my pants. That is if I pair it with this down jacket that costs $525. This is the most expensive down jacket, I think, for 3-season use that I've ever touched. And it's pretty crazy. The technology in this thing is phenomenal. You have really crazy fabrics like 7-denier shell fabric, 1000 fill powered down. And then you have this reflective layer on the inside that Rab, who makes this jacket, the Mythic G, really likes in order to reflect heat back at you and just make it that much warmer. I've had this jacket out on one night so far, and I actually felt a little bit cold with it, so I'm curious to test it out again tonight. To be honest, no one needs a jacket like this, really. This is kind of just one of those luxury pieces that you get because you have some money burning a hole in your pocket and you want to save a ton of weight while being really warm. I checked PackWizard's gear database and there's no other jacket that's as lightweight as this one that's going to be as warm in 3-season conditions. That being said, this jacket is definitely a luxury purchase. It's not going to be for everyone. There's some great budget options out there like the Decathlon Trek 100 and the Uniqlo down jacket. Both cost under $100 and are not quite as warm as this one and are a little bit heavier, but are definitely going to get the job done. Well, the Mythic G is going to keep you more comfortable on trail for the same reasons that the Offset Trio would. It's lighter weight and it's more functional than the competition. I don't think it's worth it compared to the competition because of the fact that the weight savings and the function increases aren't quite there to make up for the increase in cost. I'm going to get some water boiling for dinner using the MSR Windburner stove. This is definitely a luxury item. It's expensive, but when you're in conditions that are a little bit windy like it is now, I have some wind coming off the lake, the stove works so well because of the radiant burner, the protection from wind all around, and then the all-in-one system here. When you're on a trip and you just want to boil water and eat, having a system like this just makes a lot of sense, and for a lot of people out there it can be worth it. For me, I'm usually bringing a BRS stove and a Tokes pot because they're much less weight and they're much less expensive, but the Windburner's a pretty solid all-in-one stove, and the one I'd recommend if you are going out in conditions where it's windy and you want to boil water really fast. There's a lot of comfort-focused gear that I brought on this trip that I probably won't have time to talk about, but if you want to see everything that I brought with me, go check out my PackWizard gear list at the link in the video description. I've still got 2 hours until sunset. It's just a couple days past summer solstice. So I'm gonna enjoy my comfort setup, lean back in my chair and enjoy the sun, the views, the lake. And this is what comfort camping is all about. And then tomorrow morning, I'll share with you my sleep system, which I think for a lot of people out there is gonna be the most comfortable option out there out of any sleep system on the market. It's not cheap, and some people, they could sleep on anything when they're out in the backcountry. But for those people who have trouble sleeping when they're out on backpacking trips, this system might be worth it for you. Good morning. I had a great sleep last night, even though temperatures got down to -5 degrees Celsius. And it's all thanks to this almost $1,000 sleep system from Zenbivy. It's the Zenbivy Ultralight, and it consists of a sleeping pad, a sleeping bag, a pillow, and then a sheet system that brings it all together. I've done an in-depth look at the Zenbivy Ultralight in a previous video, so I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty, but I will share with you the updates that I made to the system in order to make it what I think is a more comfortable and better sleep system, and then my updated thoughts on the overall system and who might want to spend $1,000 in order to get the Zenbivy Ultralight. As a quick overview, you start off with the sleeping pad. You can use any sleeping pad that you want out there, but I'm using a very specific one from Zenbivy that we'll get into in a second here. And then you have this sheet that goes over top of it and then gets strapped on with a couple straps on the bottom of the pad. This sheet does two things. First of all, it has this flap that comes up the side with clips on it, but then what it does really well is keeps the quilt locked onto the sleeping pad so that you don't have any gaps between the quilt and the sleeping pad where cold can get in. The second thing that the sheet does is that it provides this hood for the pillow. And this is where I did an upgrade compared to the version that I reviewed. Is I used an uninsulated hood sheet system for the previous version, and I really just didn't think the hood was useful in that kind of circumstance. So I grabbed the insulated hood version, and I think it's a whole lot better. First of all, if you want to lay directly on the hood, it's just more comfortable to lay on. And then it also provides that insulation for you, so you don't need to be wearing a hat or anything. It's more like putting a hood on a sleeping bag and then keeping your head warm. This hood locks in the pillow, which is also from Zenbivy. They make a pillow that consists of the air bladder, down topper, and then this sheet that kind of holds it all together, and then has clips on it that clips into the head end of the sheet and keeps it tucked in underneath the hood. In addition to using an insulated version of the hood and sheet, I'm also using a warmer version of the quilt. This is the 10-degree version, which kept me toasty warm last night. The 25-degree version that I used previously would not have kept me warm last night with -5-degree temperatures and then a ton of moisture in the air. There's condensation all over the inside of my tent, condensation on the outside of my tent. Being next to a lake right now, and then with those cold temperatures, condensation, moisture was inevitable. But the 10-degree version was super comfortable, maybe too warm. I had to sleep completely naked under there, and then I had some of the clips undone as well in order to not overheat. The third change that I made to the system was the sleeping pad. In the previous testing I did, I used the ultralight version of the Zenbivy sleeping pad, but this is the flex version, and it's in a bigger size. This is the large size, so it's 25 inches wide, but then wider than the regular wide version that I was using previously. The Zenbivy Ultralight is a very comfortable pad. It's only slightly less comfortable than my all-time favorite pad, the REI Helix, but I think the stretchy material on the Zenbivy Flex really helps with pressure relief and makes it as comfortable as the REI Helix. A couple little gripes I still have with the system that didn't go away. You do have to fully inflate the sleeping pad in order to make it comfortable. They're a little bit thin at 3 inches, so if you are on the heavier side and need a really thick sleeping pad, then the REI Helix and the Zenbivy line are just not going to be for you. I still think that Zenbivy should put a snap at the head end of the quilt in order to help lock in heat around your neck and shoulders. You can take the corners of the quilt and tuck them into the hood, and that helps a little bit, but it's not as effective as having a full snap and cinch system. I've been a big fan of quilts for a long time because they allow me to shift positions inside of my sleep system without getting all tangled up like I do with sleeping bags, and I love the weight savings that they provide. There is a bit of a learning curve with quilts though, in order to prevent drafts and stay warm when you're using them. And the Zenbivy system just takes that learning curve right out of the equation, and I think makes a system that is better than any traditional quilt and better than sleeping bags for most people out there. And that's because it takes the best of both worlds. You have the quilt, which allows you to shift positions underneath it really easily, and then you have the sheet system with the hood that provides that kind of coziness of a sleeping bag and then really locks it onto the sleeping pad so that you're not getting drafts. I actually think it's better than a sleeping bag in the fact that on a sleeping bag you're laying on some of your insulation, so if you do shift positions, that compressed insulation is going to be a cold spot when it gets exposed to the air. You don't have any of that issue with the Zenbivy system. But is it worth almost double the cost of a quilt, pillow, and sleeping pad from another brand? For some people out there, I think it will be, just based on the improved functionality that you get with this system. That's really the only benefit, is the functionality. You're not getting any benefit to weight. It's a quite heavy, bulky system, even with the ultralight version, but you're gonna get a good night's sleep, almost guaranteed with the Zenbivy system. I'm not gonna guarantee it fully, but let me know if you've been uncomfortable in the Zenbivy system, because I'd be very surprised. So if you're going backpacking for more than 1 or 2 trips a year and you just want a very comfortable system because you have trouble sleeping when you're out on trail and it's really affecting how much you enjoy your trips, then I'd definitely take a look at the Zenbivy. I think investing in comfort is important. I love backpacking and getting out as much as possible. So if something like comfort is keeping you from getting out on trips and enjoying yourself in the outdoors, then I think it could be worth spending a little bit of extra money on pieces of gear in order to address that comfort issue. I recharge so much when I'm out in the backcountry, and getting out to locations like this with these kind of views is really special. But like I said, don't feel like you need to spend a ton of money in order to get out backpacking and be comfortable on your trips. There's a ton of affordable gear options out there that are gonna work just fine and be comfortable for the majority of people. But if you're getting out backpacking a lot and you want to be as comfortable as possible out on trail, then some of these expensive items that I talked about in this video might be for you. Let me know in the comments if there's a piece of gear that you've invested a lot of money into in order to help with your comfort on trail. I'd be very curious to hear about that. And if you want to see my budget ultra comfort gear list, go check out the video right up in the corner there. I mentioned it previously. It has a bunch of great options that are much more affordable than the ones I talked about in this video and are going to get the job done just fine on most backpacking trips for most people.